Let me know when you're ready, Prem.
Yep.
Okay. Hello, and welcome to the 7th episode of Present. My cheeks hurt from seeing everyone teleport in from the waiting room. Familiar faces, familiar names, and new guests as well. Welcome to those who are just joining for the first time and offering up a slice of your Sunday to our program. There are also many who have been here throughout the last weeks, and I say, welcome back. As for you old timers, you may be wondering, what has happened? I thought this series was over. Where is Prem? He's actually right over there. You are confused, perhaps. Well, Prem unfortunately ran out of ideas, and I had to step in. No, seriously, Prem will never run out of ideas. He has simply generously handed over this wild structure of a talk show to me to play with, and play with it I will. I am really struck by the space that we are collecting in. This flattened screen made up of Hollywood square rectangles, each of us ready to host our own talk show. Shoulders, head, the perfect backdrop. We are held together here with a sense of someone to our right and someone on our left, and we can hold contact with scores of people at the same time. And then there's this tiny camera that connects us across continents, time zones, and weather patterns. It's a neural network of optic fibers, beam-forming, spatial filtering, data transportation. Maybe this is encrypted, maybe this is not. It's impossible to know. My parents are in their 80s, and they ventured into this shared digital space maybe 5 or 6 hours a week. From the isolation of the Utah desert, they connect with family, touching base about the state of things in the urban metropolis of Salt Lake City, in Chicago, in Worcester, Ohio, Berlin, and even Bariloche. They fundraise for a local Democratic candidate and take dance classes on their chairs with fellow seniors from their isolation. My partner might be at the other end of the spectrum. He boasts about 7 to 8 hours a day across all imaginable platforms, talking, listening, hosting, participating, teaching, learning, dancing, singing, celebrating, meditating, and even sleeping. There are those who've been using this digital video space for years, and they are fluent in this language, I know. But we must also recognize that there are those who do not have access to this space yet. This all makes me wonder, as a teacher, designer, dancer, anthropologist, how is this space shaping us? The medium is the message, or the massage, after all. What is this landscape? How is it changing how we interact and converse? But perhaps more importantly, how can we observe it, collect and shape and play, explore, hijack, tickle, and otherwise reclaim this space? Prem has been speaking of bumpiness for a while. For me, this translates into a creative space, a space where things can be unlearned, unpacked, and God forbid, left unanswered, where discomfort and uncertainty are just part of the process. I love it when I'm an outsider and things don't quite make sense. It's like arriving in a new town where one just barely speaks the language. I see this as an opportunity to witness slippages, make associations, and fall into gaps. Imperfection is a method. Today, this evening, this afternoon, this morning, depending on where you are joining from, is an experiment. I see this chunk of time together as a choreography, a weaving together of phrases, patterns, gestures, movements, and voices. We will have solos and duets and lots of ensemble work. Parts are untested improvisations, images in my head where I wonder, what if? Other parts have been developed in the teaching over the past 8 weeks. Other sections are ongoing conversations made public. But much of the backbone of today comes from years of being a mover, a lover of scores, a choreographer of sorts, and a trusted believer in the here and now of improvisation. So, what will happen for the next 90 minutes or so? Firstly, I welcome my conversationalists. Today I have artist Jeremiah Day, digital graphics guru Christoph Knoth, and movement therapist Christa Cocciole. Our time will also be glued together by performances from singer-songwriter Josepha Conrad and curator Keyna Eleison. Thank you all for being part of this Sunday experiment. But the skeleton of this program is a series of actions, physical prompts that get us out of our passivity as watchers and into a more exploratory state. And I have a disclaimer, or maybe I want to call it a reclaimer. This is a vulnerable space for everyone, and it's not for everyone. I encourage you to participate, and this will mean moving and interacting and exploring the space. But you also are welcome to sit back and just be our audience. We welcome your attention. I don't want this to feel like an authoritarian ask. In case you got worried, yes, there will still be wild dancing at the end and lots of time to talk about it. So let's get started. I usually begin my courses and my workshops by asking my students, and there's a few students here, and I want you to rearrange furniture. And this is an exercise that I start with that is a way of inhabiting space. And we can't really do this here all together, but I do want to take a moment to actually arrive in the space that we are all in here together. So let's start off, first of all, with a couple technical considerations. What is your screen view in Zoom? I would like to ask everybody if you can please cancel my spotlight video. And if I ask everybody simply to go to gallery view, you will see that we are all here. And gallery view is the little button in the top right with lots of little things. And so here you should be seeing at least 25 people, and I want everyone just to say hello. Any waves if you hear me? Yeah. That this is a space, the space that is flattened in this interesting sense. As if you are on a phone, you can also swipe right, and you will at least see a grid of 4 as a way to be able to interact. So much of what we're going to be doing today is not me in the center point, although my voice will be leading us, but it's about experiencing this space together. The next consideration is, during the conversation, I've asked Prem and Julia, who is also here, wave really quickly, Julia, is helping us out, and Prem, that we'll be spotlighting videos or screens as we're in conversations. And then at some point, I'm also going to ask you to turn off your videos. So even if this alone is the only participatory role that you play, please play along. So another consideration is sound, that many of us are tethered to our computer with the distance of whatever the length of our headphones are. And I find this an interesting constraint, but for today, I also would like to explore what it means to actually not depend on that sound so that I can actually move deeper into the space. So if you would like to now, you can unplug your headphones and trust, at least for a moment, that we will still be able to understand one another. I think, Prem, you won't be able to hear anything because you and I can't be on at the same time. Let's see how this works. Okay, so in order to arrive, you may do this with your camera on, your camera off, it doesn't matter. I want to make sure we're each comfortable. Do you like how you're facing? Would you like to face in a different direction? Do you like your lighting? Do you like the chair that you're sitting on? Would you like to rearrange and find that sweet spot? And if it's not a sweet spot, find a different spot that's even sweeter. How does your body fit into a chair or couch or whatever else that you're sitting on? And feel free throughout the course of this, if you feel like you want to be in another space, to move your computer, to move your camera. I think too often we forget that this is a possibility. And for a moment, I'd like everybody to take a couple of breaths. Any last minute changes? Until we've all arrived. If you are having any kinds of concerns or questions, please write them in the chat, and hopefully between Prem and I, we can help you out. So let's begin. I want to start off with the action that looks at space. I like to think about this simple rectangle that contains us. And this is as simple as I want each of us that would like to, with our fingertips, to slowly, simply trace, focusing on the image in the frame. What is the frame? And if you're really good at it, try to see if you can keep your fingers right on the edge of that frame. Take your time. And they're tiny movements. Okay. And as you finish, then I'd like everybody to take a single step away from their computer, if you are able. And here I am bisecting the frame, but I'm still interested in tracing the same frame. But now it requires that I use a little bit more of my body. And I might have a little bit less information in order to get there. And if you need to move yourself in order to get there, you guys are beautiful. Look at this. This is more than I had imagined. And here we might need to bend in order to get to the lower corners, depending on how you fit. And then thirdly, taking one more step, we're going to see how far back we can be, and by moving through the space, to still be able to trace the edges. That no matter where we are in the frame, this frame itself has depth. There's an architecture within the architecture. Nice. Okay. Next, we want to take up as little space as possible. For me, it means getting away as the depth of the space. So I'm going to move backwards. Not everybody can do this, but as you try to figure out the depth of the space or the scale of yourself in the space, to try to get as small as possible. And I will yell so you can hear me. And the farthest we can get away, the smallest we can get, or the least amount of us that can be seen. And when you get there, please say hello. Nice. Please come back. Now I'd like you to find a space where you are simply again dividing the space into 2 equal halves. This is the designer in me. And from there, with one hand, slowly, I want you to extend that hand and see if you can't meet somebody on the side. And again, with the other hand, slowly. And ideally, we've intersected our frame into 4 quadrants. Everybody sees something different, but we are each in others' frames. How else can you intersect and bisect this frame? What are other ways you can cross with a diagonal in this frame? Nice. Then I would like you to fill up the frame in any way you see possible, that suddenly there is no more room in the room. Nice. Okay. This is making me so happy. So we can all come back to the center space. And I would like everybody to leave your frame, but still be able to see the empty room. Hopefully you can still see the frame. And these are empty spaces. Josepha needs to be in. Stay there, stay on the outside, please, for a moment. And what I would like everybody to recognize is that these spaces have stories. These spaces have histories and memories. And as empty spaces, they are important holders. And just please take a moment and watch and listen. I am a warrior in the battles of neighbors and lovers. I collect dust, flackers of light, and driblets of water, water, water. I attend to my loving boldness who turn their back when the money runs out. Cruel glances, rough hands. The winter is long when the knives are on the table.
Is collecting dust supposed to be an occupation here and a proper windowsill decoration? I once was a princess from South America. Now I'm a desert drought dust of hysteria. No furnace can fool me which country I am in. A greenhouse is still a house, and a louse is still a louse. No matter how charming the particulars, no matter how fancy the cigars, I am the jungle that once was, and the jungle that will be again. To remind you we are meant to be growing, monstra big, monstra deliciosa, monstra forever. 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 The room that I room in is not the room I doom in, it's the room I bloom in. Now you know the room that I room in is not the room I doom in, it's the room I bloom in. Now you know.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please, we can all come back. And I want to thank Josepha Conrad for that beautiful song about crazy plants and spaces. We have a link in the chat to kind of follow that. So that was the end of action number 1. Prem, are you able to share? This is the choreography, part 2. Give us 1 second. You need to unmute.
I'm going through you.
Oh, then we're good. But then you unshared.
Sorry.
It's okay. We'll get there. This is a piece from 1958 from John Cage. And in just a moment, Prem will begin.
This lecture was printed in Incontri Musicali, August 1959. There are 4 measures in each line and 12 lines in each unit of the rhythmic structure. There are 48 such units, each having 48 measures. The whole is divided into 5 large parts in the proportion 7, 6, 14, 14, 7. The 48 measures of each unit are likewise so divided. The text is printed in 4 columns to facilitate a rhythmic reading. Each line is to be read across the page from left to right, not down the columns in sequence. This should not be done in an artificial manner, which might result from an attempt to be too strictly faithful to the position of the words on the page, but with the rubato which one uses in everyday speech.
Lecture on nothing. I am here, and there is nothing to say. If among you are those who wish to get somewhere, let them leave at any moment. What we require is silence. But what silence requires is that I go on talking. Give any one thought a push, it falls down easily. But the pusher and the pushed produce that entertainment called a discussion. Shall we have one later?
Or we could simply decide not to have a discussion, whatever you like. But now there are silences, and the words help make the silences. I have nothing to say, and I am saying it. And that is poetry, as I need it. This space of time is organized. We need not fear these silences.
We may love them. This is a composed talk, for I am making it just as I make a piece of music. It is like a glass of milk. We need the glass and we need the milk. Or again, it is like an empty glass into which at any moment, anything may be poured. As we go along, who knows? An idea may occur in this talk. I have no idea whether one will or not. If one does, let it read.
Guard it as something seen momentarily, as though from a window while traveling. If across Kansas, then, of course, Kansas. Arizona is more interesting, almost too interesting, especially for a New Yorker who is being interested in spite of himself in everything. Now he knows he needs the Kansas in him. Kansas is like nothing on earth. And for a New Yorker, very refreshing. It is like an empty glass, nothing but wheat. Or is it corn? Does it matter which? Kansas has this about it. At any instant, one may leave it. And whenever one wishes, one may return to it.
Thank you. Okay. So I'd like to shift gears for a moment and invite Mr. Jeremiah Day, if you can please join me.
Hey.
Wherever you might. Hi, Jeremiah.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for the beautiful song.
So you and I have a lot planned, and we're trying to whittle it down. I think one of the more interesting pieces that you kind of fed my way was you've been watching epidemiologists talk about some pretty interesting things. You want to share that with us?
Yeah, I was thinking about like what actually I want in these times, and I'm spending a lot of time trying to understand what's going on. And there's a few kind of people who I've found who I've come to rely on, and one I'll send a link, a YouTube link. One is this epidemiologist in Minnesota named Michael Osterholm, and he, you know, is kind of famous for more or less predicting a lot of this about 15 years ago in his book. And then, you know, there's this footage of him on Oprah. But sort of in 2006, talking about sort of everything we're going through now. But what was really striking about the talk that I just sent was that it begins with them saying, so what are the issues? What are the challenges? And he says, oh, you know, the biggest challenge we have now is a lack of creative imagination. And I thought that was really striking, a lack of imagination. What he meant was, I think, a lack of kind of practical, like kind of coming to terms with concrete realities. And I think that that's something that, you know, another person who I've come to listen to a lot is Marianne Williamson, who ran for president, who's like a little bit of a guru, but she was talking a lot about how some of us in our personal lives and also the society have been skating on thin ice. And I think this detachment from concrete practical realities is one of these aspects of thin ice. And so I was surprised to hear Michael Osterholm talk about this as actually something that's now becoming really, really a problem, at least in the United States, maybe different than here, than Germany, where I am.
I mean, I imagine around the world, this idea of being able to imagine what we might be facing, you know, sort of the speculative, right? Like this ability to kind of go there, whatever that means.
Yeah, and what's going to happen and what is happening and what, I mean, he meant it in very concrete terms, was like, oh, if there is a vaccine, there's going to need to be infrastructure for, you know, 5 billion doses of this vaccine or whatever number of people we are. And nobody's talking about it. And nobody's talking about what the next step is. And nobody's talking about, it's very reactive. But it reminded me of this phrase that a colleague and a collaborator of mine, Fred Dewey, found in the letters of Hannah Arendt that was really important to me and actually became kind of the center of this big research project I did, where Hannah Arendt is getting, she gets this critique from her book on totalitarianism, that people, they find her too sarcastic in parts and too emotional in parts. And so she's writing this response trying to justify her style in it. And there's this passage, and maybe we read it, Fred writes about it in the context of the work I've been doing with Simone Forti. And the text is in this book. And that's how Emily and I know each other also. It's from 22 years ago in Los Angeles.
Church in Santa Monica.
But so maybe we read just this little passage from the book, and then that can kind of maybe suture things together.
Okay, I can start.
Great.
So both Simone Forti and Jeremiah Day rely upon action as a public form, the artwork as a simultaneous artifact, an energization of action, a live materialization with artifact. What they resolve is how much space of appearance requires effort and art to exist, but also that freedom is directly a consequence and an enactment of this. Thinking and moving go together, and moving in freedom demands all of our capacities and a willingness to speak, appear, and exist with, for, because of, and around both others and the objects and world between us. The relation to the world comes first and demands attention.
If one can begin to think this out in the context of philosophy, important things result. one particular concept may be helpful. In a short but extremely important piece of writing by Hannah Arendt, replying to a review of her book, The Origins of Totalitarianism, by the philosopher theologian Eric Voegelin, Arendt was unequivocal. I'm convinced that understanding is closely related to that faculty of imagination, which Kant called Einbildungskraft, and which has nothing in common with fictional ability. So a faculty of imagination, which has nothing in common with fictional ability. Here we can see the beginnings of a theory of the imagination that is decisively linked to understanding and separated from the capacity for fiction and fiction making. And Fred edited a book of writings of Simone's with a lot of these transcripts of her performing this one body of performance work called News Animations, where she is working with the daily news. And it's maybe relevant. She started working with newspapers when her father died, because her father, and she details this in another text that's in this book, that her father read the newspaper every day, and he credited reading the newspaper every day to saving his family's life, to get out of Italy at exactly the right moment, before they would have ended up being, because they were Jews in Florence, and they would have been deported to a concentration camp. So this attention to the news really was extremely practical to the family. And so Simone, when her father died, felt like she took on this responsibility, but she didn't know how to read the news because she had no background in it. So she decided to perform the news. And when I saw, and this body of work, which comes out of a kind of a bigger body of work, which is improvising with moving and talking, is this really amazing resource that Simone has developed and has shared in a lot of ways and handed off to people like me or Claire Filmon in Paris and Emily also, and people in different, it's this kind of democratic art practice of trying to wrestle with your experience, memory, dreams. And it's something I've been doing once a week. I have a session that I host here in Berlin at K77. I have hosted and will start to host outdoors, I hope, in a few weeks. But it seems like this moment of trying that also with this form that somehow we're like not, we're trying to reach out to each other, but we're not embodied. And I really like the touching of the screen. It was kind of painful for me, the edge of the screen.
Very
and how our bodies, of course, right now, at least for me, I'm extremely anxious about illness and suffering a lot of the time, and how that this limit between the political realm, public policy, my body, my family, maybe there's something in Simone's work that might have a new relevance, especially for this moment. Yeah.
I mean, I'm finding this idea of thinking and moving as being intertwined, especially the lack of movement right now and the lack of sociability that, you know, for me, just when I'm stuck in those spaces or stuck in that anxiety, if I can talk and move at the same time, it seems to allow me to somehow release things, you know, just on a personal basis. And the idea that that can actually become a creative practice, I think, is really interesting. So maybe we can go on to our very first ever possible, I mean, Jeremiah and I have done lots of not lots and lots, but we've done some work together in space, but we've never tried this outside of space. And I have to be fairly transparent to say, to move from talk show host to improviser on a dime, as you put it, is a little daunting, but let's see how we go. Do you want to outline really quickly how we went from that reading earlier today and kind of converted it to what we're doing next?
Yeah, well, one of the, I think one of the big things that Simone works from is how do we build up an inquiry that's somehow also associative? And that was a big thing for me, my interest in it, because I was making kind of very dry, didactic political art, and I was really interested in this more associative thing that she was doing. And a big part of it is free writing. So to write and write and write. And so this morning when we talked about, well, how are we going to proceed? We decided, well, we could just do a free writing and then do a kind of an exchange. And so that's what we're going to do.
With so far as I'm going to stand up.
Yes.
If I make everybody else do it, I'll stand up and you stand up, and then let's just start.
Yes.
And see what comes out.
And I'm going this thing. I'm going to set a timer.
Okay, 2 minutes, 3 minutes?
Let's say 2.5.
Okay, 2.5 is good.
Really good.
And then I'm asking Prem or Julia are kind of our I think we decided you guys were going to be our co-improvisers to see what happens with potentially spotlighting. Okay. Jeremiah?
Yeah.
Yes. There are a lot of shuns in this text. And I have difficulty pronouncing these shuns. Shun, do not. T-I-O-N. This is an ending that's become authoritative. It's an action. An action, it's a load-bearing action. I would like to imagine there are these children's voices, and I'd like to imagine that a child is going to take that T-I-O-N and rearrange it. I believe it was your child who took me there. T-I-O-N. N-O-I-T. Almost night. I-O-N-T. It's almost don't.
Yes.
Yeah. N-I-T-O. Fuel. T-N-O-I, a toy to play with. A transformer. It appears ready to take on. Take on. Take on. Take on. Take on. Authoritationalism of our time. Generation. Alteration. Fascination. Congregation. Satisfaction.
Child in background.
Child in background still.
With child things. How do caregivers, the family, ever take a breath to think or make art? That scene of Louis C.K. exhausted from putting his daughters to bed, smokes a cigarette out the window of the bathroom. Or the wall of accumulated obstacles. Grant to write, dishes to do, paperwork to finish, another money job, news to read or not, protests to be contemplated but unmade. Was going to get arrested at the embassy gate over Chelsea Manning, the indignity of her terms of confinement. Lost clarity, hometown, my hometown ache, your hometown, making a home, a foreign tongue. Many people like me, bitter about being told what to do, bitter about being told what to do. Protest, or at the State House, the loss of business, job, plans, dreams, imagination of how to live with difficult facts, Biden 2020, Biden 2020. When, how, when, enables in my clothes, difficult facts embeds in my clothes like a moth does. sitting with Hilla the other night, I thought maybe this isn't the time for art. Maybe we have to wait another time. It will come. Another time. Another time. Another time. Another time. Another time. So Osterholm says that it's like a submarine with screen doors.
Wait, what does he say?
He says it's like a submarine with screen doors.
What would a submarine do with screen doors?
You can't stop the water coming in. You can't stop the disease from moving through. And as it moves through, if we're at like 5% now, maybe New York's 20%.
Yeah.
We're gonna get to 70 one way or another.
That's one way or another, right? Like it's one way or another. Does it depend where you are?
Yeah. All right.
All right.
That was the experiment. Thank you.
It was an experiment. Thank you for experimenting with me, Jeremiah.
Thank you for
That was scary. All right. So thank you, Jeremiah, and I will look forward to your sessions when they come back up again. All right. So I think we need to come back to me for just a moment. We have another set of actions. What do? I need to go back to gallery view. So this is actually hard for me. I think the improvisation space, when I am working in improvisation, I don't normally have an audience because I'm not a big fan of being watched. I would much prefer watching. And I think moving into this space has been about watching and collecting. And I've been struck by a lot of the stuff that's been written at the moment about the way that our brain is constantly scanning for information and trying to make sense, not only of the world that we're moving through in outside and as we are coming in contact with others, but also in these digital spaces. That I'm waiting to figure out, when should I speak? When should I listen? When should I sit back? When should I assert myself? And all of these pieces are coming through my eyes. That I don't feel after a long day, as one might expect, that my back or my shoulders or my hips are sore. Instead, it is my eyes. I feel like I've been wearing a blindfold of light all day, and I've been watching myself do what I do. And I don't like this. I've been thinking about ways to actually free my eyes. And I feel like my eyes are somehow need to settle and be quiet. I would like to start the next series of actions by moving into the gallery view, if you're able to, and simply select one person at random. And we'll take a moment and just look at a single person. And pick that person. They may be looking at you, they may not be looking at you. There's no way to know. But it feels like they're looking at you. And let your focus stay there. What is the person wearing? How is the person breathing? What might this person be thinking? Perhaps by centering our focus on one individual with love and openness and vulnerability, our eyes can rest rather than searching in insecurity and uncertainty. I'm looking at somebody and they appear in some ways to have just to be right in front of me, but instead I know that there is this camera that connects us. And so I'd like to take a moment and play with this camera and take back this camera so that it becomes actually something that we feel like we have some control over. This tiny little camera, and I think for me it's a little green dot. And what I'd like everybody to do is point it out. So we are, if you have your camera on and you want to, but there is this little piece, and somehow if I could reach through it, perhaps I could touch your fingertip. You know, we assume it cannot read our fingerprints yet. But we're on an edge of vulnerability and trust that I think is important. Same note, what happens if we try to see each other through the camera? We did this for a moment, but is there a way we can approach the camera with our eyes, and can we see anything? Or to imagine that we can see through. And if you have any objects around you, I just want to take a minute and play with, can I distort the camera? Can I put things in front of in front of the camera that is going to change how it sees? This might be glass. That in many of the experiments of the 50s and 60s, that we're able to change the perception of the camera, that it sees us differently. You might have reflective surfaces, which does something interesting as well. Can you mirror the camera back at itself? And I think in a little bit of a nod, because I happen to have a big, you know, is there a way that actually the camera and the space itself can be mirrored back on itself as an infinite space? And I think if we start to actually take this camera and make it our own and not consider it a passive player, but actually part of us, we perhaps have more engagement and our eyes can rest. So talking about cameras for a moment and talking about can retinal scans and fingerprints and the idea that we are assuming a certain level of trust and privacy in this space, I'd like to ask Mr. Christoph Knoth to join me for a moment.
Hey.
Hey, Christoph.
Hey, Emily. Thanks for all the actions.
Yeah. You never know how it goes. I'm between being a teacher and a parent and a dancer and a anthropologist and a choreographer. It's sort of a funny space to figure out the right tone, but I appreciate everybody's jumping in. So Christoph, you and I spent some time messing around with some tech. You spent a lot of time sort of trying to put together some tech stuff to try to think about where all of this can potentially go. And we struggled a bit.
You can say that, yeah.
I
mean, it's not easy. And it always goes wrong. And I think that's maybe also the beauty of it sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. Let me see. For some reason, how do I get to you? There you are. Okay, I'm looking for you and I can't find you and my eyes are searching all over again. So why don't we take some excerpts of some of the things that we tried out and we can just share this with people. We can kind of retrace our steps a little bit. Maybe I'll just ask Prem to play some of it in the background while you and I chat for a moment. Christoph and I had a fantastic idea that we would trick you guys by having a conversation elsewhere and bring it back in as if it were real time as we were talking about trust. Oh my God, Christoph, where are we? What is happening here?
Yeah, so what we are looking at is a browser inside of a browser, and we are floating on top of it. And actually, it's an app that is called Jitsi, and you can use it on your phone and also in the browser. And you can host it yourself, and it's an open source software.
And it's having a hard time loading. The tech, I think, is against us. So let's just, while we're waiting for the circle to go in circles, why are you using Jitsi?
Yeah, so I'm together with my friend Conrad Renner, we teach a class, graphic design class in Art University. And as everybody, we had to go to the online teaching, and we didn't want to use Zoom because there's a lot of privacy issues with it, and it's a big corporation, so you don't really know what they're doing with your data. Maybe they're just collecting all the videos as right now. So we thought if we have to force the students to have an online course with us, we want to use an open source software. And
Maybe
that's why we use
Zoom
Jitsi.
didn't want us to show off Jitsi. Maybe Zoom just did that to us on purpose.
Yeah, and in the default configuration, Jitsi almost works as a Zoom. It doesn't have so many features, like there's no spotlight mode and things like that. But the thing that's nicer about it is that you can just mod it yourself. So what you were seeing, those round dots, it's just like the same videos that we're seeing right now in Zoom, but they just had like some little animation to them.
We also tried out another one. Maybe Prem can get this other one going that we tried out, spatial chat as well, which I thought was pretty interesting. And this might be old school to some of you, but I think for me it was interesting to think about the way the interfaces that we have here are kind of to be taking, look at that, that's you, but it's you at another time in the day. Let's see. Is it able to go? Almost. There we go.
So in the classroom, we tried out a couple also of other screen sharing and video sharing tools. Mm-hmm. And one that's really nice, and I will put it to the chat later. It's called Spatial Chat. And It looks a bit similar to what we're seeing right now. So everybody is a little dot, but you can also move the dots with your mouse. And then if you move them closer to each other, it's almost like in real life, where when you're closer to somebody, you can hear them and talk to them. And we tried it out, and it was very nice as a class experience that people could just form groups, people could just go around. And also people didn't need to mute themselves all the time, because you could just, if you didn't like the talking, you could just distance yourself. If you wanted to be included, you could just go somewhere. So I will put it into the chat. And I mean, if you have a meetup in the future with 10 or more people, maybe it's something worth trying out.
It was interesting how we were trying these, and actually myself, we only had 2 of us, so we kept on adding more of ourselves to the chat so that it had more of ourselves, so that it looked like it was more populated. And I found myself getting so nauseous by having these sort of bubbles. What's happening now is I can't tell which one is the real you and which one is the shared screen of you. And I feel like these dissonances, or these when things don't quite connect in this way, it's pretty fascinating to think about when things run smoothly. All right. We're really like, is that the real you? If I lift my hand, will you lift your hand so I know that you're responding to me? Okay, good, good. Any last thoughts a little bit about where you think some of this technology might be going? If you could do anything with it, what would you like to do?
Yeah, I think that in a way you have more, ability to see everybody at the same time and to interact with everybody at the same time without interfering with the whole conversation. I think this might be interesting, like this feeling that you don't have to mute yourself to be part of a conversation. And I think there will also be more custom solutions to those problems and to those meetups. And yeah, we did one also for our classroom where we cropped everybody like that. So it feels a bit evil at the beginning, but then you can fit easily 20 people on one screen and also have a presentation at the same time. And you don't have to choose between having the big presentation or seeing everybody. So
One last, actually, we didn't talk about this, but there was, somebody had talked about that there's now the software in Zoom and in other things that can keep track of whether or not you're paying attention.
Mhm.
How is that able to figure out where your attention is?
I mean, the easiest thing is that the operating system can find out which app is in the foreground. So the idea is if there's Netflix in the foreground, then you're probably not paying so much attention. On the other hand, you could also do some research just for the group. So it's, of course, tricky.
Yeah,
And
it
also,
seems a lot of privacy questions in there about usability and sort of surveillance at the same time.
yeah,
Okay.
totally.
Hey, Christoph, thank you for trying this out with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Emily. Later.
All right. We're going to shift gears for a moment. We're talking about all this input and all of this maybe somewhat dystopian, and I want to take a moment. We're kind of reaching the last stretch of our evening or morning or whatever time it is for you. And I'd like to ask Keyna Eleison, if you could join us just for a moment.
Yes,
Hi,
I'm
Keyna.
here. Hi.
Hi, Keyna. So Keyna, you have joined us, I think, potentially every single one of these present talk shows.
Yes,
It's
probably.
lovely to have you. And Prem sent me a text that you wrote quite recently. The chat will go into the link will go into the chat. And you and I talked about it, and I had asked you if you would please perform that for us, which you generously have offered to do. And we talked about, thank you for watching our, okay, I'm moving over for a minute. So what I'd like to do to kind of bring us back down into our bodies is that we actually, all of us, turn off our cameras, but still pay attention. That the temptation to go off and do this, that, and the other, but for the next 3 or 4 minutes for Keyna, that we don't necessarily need to be able to see, but we can still listen. And this is smiling in the face of the world's end. Is that good? You good?
Wonderful.
Okay.
Wonderful.
So I'm going to turn off, but I'll be listening.
Right. So, elbows are admirable joints, a lively passageway of relationships with our circulation, emotion, gestures, and performance. An elbow can say a lot about a person. Its absence would be deeply felt, but its presence is rendered completely invisible. An elbow, the elbow, which from now on I shall make it a point of calling the she. It's a vital joint, even if without her, life does not perish. An elbow can never be thought as an appendix, something that is there inside the body, but whose functions no one understands. And even if we don't think about her, an elbow, it's an extremely erotic joint. Touching her inside and outside brings about a pleasurable sensation and the power of expectation. It's in concert within her, is there on her other band that we propped up, space-time tightened up, the void to never be touched or desired. This elbow is unuseful, indispensable, untransplantable joint. And without will of those who suffer, don't speak will of someone who suffers. Maybe my ancestors are not humans. Human, human, maybe. And if my ancestors are not human, I must not be neither. My song, my cry is not human. My beauty, my curves, my smell, my taste, my voice, my writing. That must be why I'm not hurt. That's why I don't die. Because I'm not part of life. I come from a neutral humanity, beyond the warriors, the saints, the multitudes that I am. What I represent and what my body represents inside this boundary was not carried to utopia, this perfect place. I'm not part of any kind of perfection. That is why many of me are not locked away now. They wave in public transport to save lives. They inhabit places that sustain lives. And people like me, are they people? If they don't die, are they not people? We are not people. But I sing loud and dance hard to be admired as a thing. And I smile. But now I can smile in the face of the word sand. And I smile. But I know now I can smile in the face of the words and a word was never part of. So it will fall and I will watch. Things stay right. So sing out. Days numbers, roads closed, life's cut short, the mess, the wilderness, the longing. And what's missing? And what's missing? Forgive me for seeing something in the hollow shell. Forgive me. Are things outside or in the same place? What is the other? But can we stop before the revolt? To my ancestors with thick elbows and my elbows slender and moisturized. And now greet each other with our elbows.
Thank you, Keyna. It's true, I'm greeting you with my elbow.
Great.
So I forgot to hold up your card. Did I hold up your card before? I think I did. Thank you so much for sharing that. It was definitely a sound exploration. So I'd like to move to the very end of the event and or the last section of the event where we're going to be, I'm interested in moving into this sort of grand experiment of connectedness and how do we stay connected. And I think this starts with an exercise that I've been doing, I think, through my childhood, through somatics workshops, through improvisation seminars, through teaching, even within a therapy context. Some of you might be familiar with it, some of you may not. And it's just a simple mirroring exercise. And in order to kind of get us all on the same boat, you can, if you would like, you can turn your videos back on again. And yeah, thank you, Prem. You just put the link to Keyna's text so we can follow the beautiful text that you sang. So in thinking about mirroring, I think I'm going to be holding up my right hand. And this is sort of an interesting experiment that if I ask you to hold up the mirror of what I'm holding up. And so you might be switching around, but that if you were to look at me and I am your mirror, that your hand will be opposite from mine. And we can do the same thing and switch to the other hand. So in order to get us all kind of in this place, I'm going to lead. I am the head of this gigantic organization, and I will move slowly. And just as a way of us all coming together, please join me. Thank you. I'd like to take the next 4 or 5 minutes, and we are going to continue with this exercise. Prem is going to use breakout groups, bigger groups of breakout groups where we have 10 or 12 people in a group. And what I would like is that we continue with this mirroring, but you find one partner. And so when you're in a smaller group, to say like, Jeremiah, will you be my partner? And Jeremiah says, yes, sure, I will be your partner. And one of us can lead. And in this grid, you only have to follow one person, and one person is following you. And after about what feels like a moment or a minute, see if you can switch and the other person will lead. And after about 1 more minute, see if you can start to actually move as one, that we're not thinking so much about who is the leader and who is the follower. And this is just an experiment. We'll take about 3 minutes of moving and have a couple minutes before you come back. So 5 minutes in total. And then we'll come back to our last conversation, which will be building on this. If you're not comfortable being part of it, don't worry about it. You can stay out of the breakout room and just join us, stay here, and we'll be back in 5 minutes. I've also asked that sort of Christa and Josepha, myself and Prem and Jeremiah will be in each one of those groups. So if there's any kind of questions of how to do it, but it's a way to just break up into slightly smaller groups. So what'll happen in just a second, Prem will throw us teleporting into a different room on 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. I hope there wasn't too much.
Second. Not everyone's back.
Not everybody's back.
When they got 20 people in.
It's the crazy teleporting. How are we? Can I talk now? I can talk now. All right. I hope that was fun, that it kind of felt, maybe it was a little bumpy, but bumpy is as bumpy does. So I hope that gets us sort of a little bit back into our bodies, because I'd next like to invite the fantastic Christa Cocciole to the conversational stage. Hi, Christa. I can see you down there.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Christa. So maybe I can start off with saying I've known Christa for a very long time. You are a movement therapist, but you and I have raised children together, and a lot of our movement practices come from really similar places. And so I thoroughly enjoyed having these conversations with you and figuring out what was interesting. What I think you bring to this conversation that's really important are questions around mental health and well-being and bodies. And so maybe you can start off by telling us a little bit about Radical Presence, which is this incredible group that you've been running, and where did it come out of, and why is it important now in particular?
I'll try to keep it short. Days after the Trump election 2016, I had quite a meltdown in my life, and I thought, oh God, just losing all hope for humanity. And in a nutshell, I realized, wait a minute, I've been practicing yoga and mindfulness and meditation and all of these practices that go internally for years. And I've also been an activist, a social activist, and working on projects with social transformation. They were these two separate worlds. And all of a sudden I realized, wait a minute, what we need to do is really merge these worlds together. I know that here in Berlin, in every street corner, there's a yoga studio. How can we bring this practice from the mat onto the streets and be a catalyst for social transformation that we want to be? And there's a quote from Reverend Bailey, who does the People's Supper out in Chicago. I think it's great. She said, social change moves at the speed of relationship, and relationship moves at the speed of trust. And then I got thinking, as a movement therapist, working specifically with trauma and in the psychiatric hospital, that maybe what's slowing us down sometimes is that trust isn't something that's a given. Like there's not that many people that have innate trust in their lives. So radical presence was this idea of going to the root. So radical being from the Latin word root, and getting to the root. How can we trust ourselves? How can we learn to trust each other? How can we learn to trust chaos? How can we learn to be with whatever's coming up? So right now, with this uncertainty, I'm not sure if people are familiar with the term VUCA, the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity.
Don't know this term, VUCA.
It comes from like organizational development, VUCA.
Can you say it again?
Okay. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity.
Mm-hmm.
So we're living in this perfect example of VUCA. And I feel like embodiment is what is going to help us navigate through these times. Okay, coming back to how can I be in my center when uncertainty or ambiguity is coming at me in full throttle?
I mean, we talked a little bit about this, but for me, when I was talking about my eyes, this searching, I am just searching, I'm scanning, and my brain is going out there trying to make sense of that. And I feel like it's something new that my brain is doing. But, you had said something about, no, this is actually something that we're very good at. but maybe you can elaborate.
I believe under good conditions, we're learning this constantly in our daily practice. What's right now when we're doing things online, we have what I would like to call somatic dissonance. So my eyes are doing what I do maybe in my surroundings that are, when I'm present with my surroundings, but when I'm on a screen, my body's doing the same thing. I'm looking for cues and some resonance, and I'm searching. Are people interested in what I'm talking about, or is it boring? So my body is still doing this unconscious scan, but I'm not getting the information that I'm needing. I think it's also interesting. I read someplace, I need to fact check this, but I read someplace that our conscious mind can process 4 bits of information per second, and our unconscious mind can process 44 million bits per second.
Wow.
So this eye scanning thing, I could be conscious of it, but the unconscious part of what I'm scanning, I'm not even aware of it, but I'm just feeling like this, wait, something's not right. And that something that's right is what makes us sometimes feel exhausted at the end of a Zoom session, or when I'm Zooming with a loved one and I'm seeing this person, but I'm not getting that resonance back. It's a matter of exercise. I think that we can really stretch that muscle. I think we can really strengthen the muscle in order to connect in that way that we're used to, when we can touch and squeeze and kiss the people that we love.
So I think this idea of stretched awareness is nice, because I have a tendency, on one hand, I want to close off a little bit, or I want to hold things, and I'm worrying about my eyes and my children and my own well-being. And this idea of, change can only move at the pace of relationships, and relationships trust. How do we stretch that awareness in order to move from my well-being, which is really important, to a collective well-being? And how is that happening in your practice? How are you seeing, or how are you able to kind of, especially in this digital space, how are you able to get people to move out of their sort of individual comfort zones?
Daniel just wrote pilot versus autopilot. That's a really nice title for that. Exactly. What is problematic at the moment is also becoming a nice tool of becoming conscious of that. So when someone says, "Oh, I'm really feeling tense," like, okay, let's stay there and be tense. That maybe that was autopilot for a long time. Now we're becoming aware of different patterns that we had maybe subconsciously. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I see people moving on. I invite everyone to do a little twist and turn and moving that maybe we wouldn't do if we were in session together. Maybe
it's so unacceptable in 90% or probably 80% of the things that I take part in, to actually be moving. I mean, I might even do it in class, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't necessarily do it here because it's kind of weird. And the weirdness. But at the same time, what I think has been interesting is, in this moment of uncertainty, people are really listening to each other in a way like, "Hey, how you doing?" And people are like, "I'm fine." And now most of my meetings start with actually a really vulnerable check-in, that there are boundaries that are being broken, that I think are moving and thinking. Yeah, moving and thinking.
That's what I love about the potential that we have here. The potential is to break these old patterns that we weren't even conscious of. Like, "Hey, how you doing?" "Oh, I'm fine." At least the Americans in this group know this. And so suddenly we have this opportunity to say, "Oh, wow, I'm not really doing so well, but it's really nice to connect with you right now." So something that would be unheard of on the streets of New York, just saying hi to somebody. I remember moving to Berlin and being kind of shocked when people would give me a real answer to that question. Oh, wow, I wasn't prepared to hear that answer.
To be able to answer that, fully.
Yeah.
Well, I think you and I have kind of played around with a couple of ideas, and I think with the last kind of set of actions, we'd like you to lead us. I would like you to lead us in a bit of a score that is a collective score that I think the goal of it is to see how connected we can be in a sense of a group well-being and support.
Mm-hmm.
And I think building on some of the mirroring stuff that we just did, do you want to take over and we'll do it for about 5 minutes?
Yeah,
Right.
excellent.
So we need to be on gallery view again. That's important. So everybody please switch on to gallery view so that you can see others.
Mm. I just want to just pick up on what you just said about well-being. My definition right now, and we could really spend a long time talking about what is exactly well-being, but I want to look at it under the aspect of adaptability and resilience, and what I find myself struggling with each day being a little bit different, and numbers and fear and different other people's fear. So well-being, let's just put the focus on that part of well-being, because I think there's a lot of well-being aspects. And I loved the scores that you've already given us, and I think we can just build on that, because well-being for me is adaptability and resilience, and being able to take my comfort zone that I'm in and stretch a bit without panicking. So I don't want to stretch my comfort zone so much and so fast that I panic.
Where were you this morning during my tech rehearsal? It's like,
You in panic?
Yeah. My comfort zone kind of was a little over my natural.
Okay.
So yes, it's good. Keep going.
So what we're going to do, we're going to like surf the borders between comfort zone and stretching. And we're going to use all of the tools that Emily already guided us through. It would probably be a little bit more fun in standing, but you don't have to stand. You can sit. And what we're going to do is give ourselves permission to experiment. And what we'll do is experiment with going in and out of connection. And connection can be moving, it can be witnessing and observing, and using all of the resources that we've already played around with. I'd like to start to just make a group score with the people that are on your screen, and you can maybe shift around if you want, and start to mirror somebody that's on your screen. Start to mirror somebody. They won't know. They might not even see you mirroring them. They might be in a totally different screen. So you want to start to play around and see what happens when your curiosity shifts. You maybe start to see somebody else on your screen doing something else that looks interesting. You want to shift that. And I invite you to switch your speeds. You could be mirroring somebody and maybe taking it up a notch or down a notch in the speed. Remember all the different tools that you played with, being really far away. Maybe you want to mirror somebody far away. Now stretch yourself. Maybe you can start copying 2 people. Maybe there's 2 people that you join what they're doing. Let yourself shift. Let yourself be curious and move into another tempo, another spatial inquiry. And again, stretch your awareness. Maybe you can see now 3 people. Maybe there's 3 different people on your screen that you can start to mirror. Maybe you're taking the quality of somebody's movement and shifting the tempo. Take the quality of somebody's movement and maybe shifting spatially, looking in a new direction. Same movement, different direction. And let's take a pause for a moment collectively. Let's all just stop in like a still life, like a photo, to see where you are, where the others are. And sense, what does it feel like right now in your body, connected with a group? What are you aware of? And slowly move in the way that you would like to move right now. So moving, following the shifts that your body is feeling comfortable with. And spend some time moving the way that feels good. Just keep following the ease. Your breath. So we're returning to comfort right now, returning to comfort and ease. And when you're ready, shift back into stretching. So following your comfort and ease, and see if maybe there's somebody that's inspiring you in their movement and their comfort and ease. And again, stretching into connection with what they're doing. And sense, can you keep following your comfort and ease even when you're mirroring somebody else? And if not, see what can you do to return to comfort? And choosing another person. You're speeding up. Let's try to join somebody else. Let's try to join somebody else that we see, and on our screen we have this almost the same quality of everyone. And making it bigger, making your whole screen fill up with this energy together. Taking it out into the space, taking it into your room that you're in, taking it on the walls, taking it on the floor. And for the next 20 seconds, just give it all three-dimensionally into your space. Give it back to us. But you're mirroring, yes, with your feet, with your arms. Use your eyes in the space, scanning. In the next 5 seconds, bringing it back to ease and comfort in the way and the quality of movement that you'd like to explore. Shifting, rolling, stretching. Yeah. And then we're going to slowly return to Miss M.
What a gift. That was so good. Thank you, Christa.
You.
So before we start dancing, that was dancing.
That was it.
But oh, that felt so good. I haven't done that in a while. Thank you, thank you. I'd like to use the chat to collect your thoughts. a little bit of a debrief so we have an idea. If everybody who feels like it, just take a moment. And how are you feeling? Maybe what was easy, what was fun, but also what was hard and what was confusing. Maybe in relationship to Christa, it might be a relationship to other things. And I'd like to just sort of collect some of this for each other. What surprised you? How do you feel differently now than you did when you first showed up? It's fantastic to punch out the air. We should be doing that more often. There's so much tension in there, isn't it? Thank you, Colette. This is really nice. It's really nice to see how this is all coming together. So we have one last promised action. If any of you know the Donnas, we've got a little bit of the Donnas for you. Prem, will you do the honors?
Is it time?
Yeah, we can keep collecting commentary, but my energy is still vibrating and I feel like I need to keep vibrating. A little bit the rebel that comes out in me. Thank you for everybody for all of the super lovely action and sharing. Let me know when we're ready to go.
We're ready.
One last dance. Please join us if you feel like it.
No.
I
Sorry.
love this. This is the bumpiness. This is prayer. Is a method. Silence.
On the floors of Tokyo, down in London town to go. With the record selection and the mirror's reflection, I'm a dancing with myself. When there's no one else inside, in a crowded, lonely night. Well, I wait so long for my love vibration, and I'm dancing with myself. Dancing with myself. Dancing with myself. Well, there's nothing to lose and there's nothing to prove, and I'm dancing with myself. If I looked all over the world, and there's every type of girl, but your empty eyes seem to pass me by, leave me dancing with myself. So let's take another drink, 'cause it'll give me time to think. If I had the chance, I'd ask the one to dance, and I'll be dancing with myself. Dancing with myself. Dancing with myself. Well, there's nothing to lose, and there's nothing to prove, and I'll be dancing with myself. Well, if I looked all over the world, and there's every type of girl, but your empty eyes seem to pass me by, leave me dancing with myself. So let's take another drink, 'cause it'll give me time to think. If I had the chance, I'd ask the one to dance, and I'll be dancing with myself. Dancing with myself. Dancing with myself. If I had the chance, I'd ask the
love you guys. So that concludes our evening, morning, afternoon. Special shout out, please, to Prem and to Julia, who made this all possible. Also, thank you to all of my speakers and performers, Jeremiah, Josepha, Keyna, Christoph, and Christa. But also, I think, you know, you never know. Like, I put this together and I thought, will people come? Will people do this? You know, how does this all come together? And this was an absolute pleasure, especially as things are shifting and changing in all sorts of ways in our lives. So thank you deeply.
And I want to just say thank you, Emily. Thank you for putting together this amazing program. And thank you, everyone, for coming together for Present once again. We love you.
Smiley face. Okay. So you can unmute now if you want to, like, there's something about
Yay, finally.
I realized about halfway through there was too much.
Oh, Emily!
Thank you, everyone.
Brilliant.
Wonderful.
Yeah, kind of what was needed, I think, right about now.
No, I want you to know.
I'm right here.
Hey,
Hi, Mom.
and Jen.
Hi, Jennifer. Hi, Dad. Look, my family's over there. They're just 2 squares over from me.
Yeah, that's
So
because
amazing to see you guys.
good to see you, Krista and
Nice
Joseph.
to see you. How fun. I get to dance with you so far away. Awesome.
The high point of our day.
Yoo-hoo.
Thanks for coming. Thanks, Mom and Dad and Jennifer. Lovely that you were here. Everybody, too.
Thanks, everyone, for being
Thank you.
Thank you for making space disappear and get us all together.
Yeah, it's a little bit of that, isn't it? Like Monday and tomorrow. So we'll figure out Monday tomorrow.